I once heard a story about a woman in her 40s who had never been to college, but she felt a calling to enter the ministry. Well, her mother pointed out to her that between college and seminary, she would not be ordained until she was 59 years old. "Well, Mom," she said, "I'm going to turn 59 no matter what. I may as well hit it doing what God is calling me to do." But in that calling church, when her story was told, it was heard by a man who had spent his adult life in banking, but had been miserable for the last decade. And that story made him consider the new creation that might happen in his life. And today, he has finished nursing school, and he cares for patients with cancer in what was for him his calling to a new and different life. Communities of faith are like that. Don't join one unless you are willing to be changed. You always run the risk of being called by God into a bigger life. Now, the world outside the church tells you to live a life that is big enough for yourself. But it's in communities of faith that we hear a more compelling message. Live a life that is big enough for God. Live your life and live it abundantly. But to live a big enough life, you have to be open and let the Spirit in. You have to allow God to meddle and acknowledge that it's not all about your small plans. God's plans may be bigger and better. Now, most of the world would disagree. Most of the world would say that where you are in life is a result of your own careful planning, hard work, deliberate endeavor. The world neglects often to mention your birth order, your class status, your geography, and often in our vanity, we human beings ignore those things too, instead praising our own decision-making power and good planning. The general idea out there is that you are in charge of your own life, and once you start on a plan, you must stick to it. There's not much room in that for calling, is there? But instead, hear these words from the gospel. "So again Jesus said to them, 'Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate.'" Now sometimes we forget that Christ is the gate into a bigger life. And sometimes instead we'll let the world be our gate, or social pressure be the gate, or our ambitions be the gate, or our neuroses be the gate, or our family baggage be the gate. The problem is that all that may be a gate to somewhere, but it's probably not the gate to a bigger and more abundant life. In the affluent suburbs of Chicago, where I serve as a minister, there are a lot of gates that lead you to smaller plans, not bigger plans. Let me give you one example. These days, the high school students in my church often apply to these colleges where they must apply not to the college as a whole, but to a particular major. It's as if, at the age of 17, they could know exactly what course their lives will take. And so then, having done that, the pressure moves backwards. And so then their high school extracurricular activities must be geared from the 9th grade on toward making them appealing applicants, not just to the college, but to a particular department or major. And the pressure then to have a plan and work towards it becomes so intense. And next thing you know, you're picking a plan not based upon exploration or risk or calling, but you pick a plan based upon your likelihood of achieving it. And that is not a good thing for the world. It seems that so many things that used to wait until later now begin so early, with 70-pound children strapping on these football pads in the 2nd grade to prepare for a game that they are really way too small to play, all in the interest of being good enough or better than the next kid by the time they actually are the right size. And consider all those pressures and plans for little ones, the foreign language lessons, the music, the sports. These are all good things in and of themselves, but they're so easily corrupted into the blasphemy of a life plan that comes too early. And usually, the plan that gets set in stone too early is a plan that is just too small. But it continues into adulthood, as people who dislike their jobs will complain that their lives are not all they hoped they would be. And they complain but do nothing, with the resignation of a person who has no options. What an irony to hear that kind of talk from people here in this country where we live at the peak of the world's economic pyramid. And sometimes these complainers are people who really do have the most in terms of resources, but also in terms of options when you look at the scale of the whole world. But they are acting and behaving as though they are locked in as victims. This may be the tax of having so much. But what if instead they lived as though God was still speaking to them, calling them to a more abundant life? Could you risk making a change in your life in order to have one that is big enough for God's dream for you? And could you make more than just a personal transformation, more than just an individual blessing? Because Jesus' call to us to live abundant lives is actually a call for the transformation of the world, so that justice will roll down into every life. The big enough life cannot just be about individual happiness or about personal growth. The abundant life needs to be big enough for everybody so that all may eat at the heavenly banquet. And if the church cannot proclaim that and proclaim it boldly, then we may as well just pack up and shut down and turn the sanctuary over to the next SAT prep course, hand the whole thing over to career planners and headhunters, sign the deed for the building over to all those fearless defenders of the overdog and shelterers of the status quo, and just quit calling ourselves a church. Because if we are not calling people into new and abundant life, not calling society into new and abundant life, and doing it regularly, we are not doing our job. But of course, mercifully, in a world of plans and schedules, it is in church that you'll hear Jesus saying wild things like this: I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. And then he goes on to say, as a warning, that leading a big enough life is not going to be easy. He says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So, watch out for the thief. Don't let over-planning and over-scheduling and over-worrying be the thief that steals your life. Don't even let family pressures or self-doubt or fear be that thief. Because those things are actually too small to stand in the way of a big enough life. For when you reach for that next big thing, you do not do it alone, but you do it with the God who dreams of bigger things than we can ever imagine. You do it through Jesus, who came that we might have life and have it abundantly.